Hi, this is Gary Meese with a case against. We're having a bit of a tropical storm here. Otherwise, everything's fine. As long as we don't get blown away or washed away. Anyway, we're going to continue with the Bible Confession of Jesse Misskelley Jr. Misskelley is confessing to his defense attorney, Dan Stidham, shortly after he was convicted of the murders of Michael Morris, Stevie Branch, and Christopher Byers on May 5th, 1993 in West Memphis, Arkansas. His co-defendants, they weren't defendants in his case, but because they were tried separately, but co-defendants in the case, but not the trial, and Jason Baldwin and Damien. That trial is coming up, so Misskelley's confessions at this point seemed to offer some hope that maybe he was willing to testify against the other two, perhaps for an exchange on his a more lenient sentence, though that didn't happen. And I'm not going to suggest that was Stidham's goal at this point. And he's already been confessing for a while to Stidham, but we're going to go on with continue on from the last episode. This, of course, is the case of the West Memphis Three. Stidham asked, okay, May the 5th, you get to Lakeshore. And Lakeshore is the trailer park where Jason Baldwin lived. Dominique Tier, Damien Eccles' pregnant girlfriend, also lived in Lakeshore. You get to Lakeshore about 6:30. You didn't see anybody else there? Nobody else was standing around that would have seen you? No, sir. Because I always went the back way, towards Jason's house. I always went the back way, not the front way. So we started walking towards West Memphis. We walked over an overpass. It's the overpass between Lakeshore and Walmart is the overpass. We walked over it. We started walking toward west to Walmart. Jason and me, I asked Jason, where we're going to find them girls at. Now, Jason's told him they're going to find some girls. He said, we just going to walk around and look. And I said, okay. So we started walking. We went down Blue Beacon Road, then by a bridge. We saw a little trail, and we went down that little trail. And we sit there and we start drinking. We went from Walmart, stayed on that road all the way down, all the way through, went through the red lot, over the railroad track, and on down to an Audible, then Blue Beacon and Love's. I was wearing white and blue Adidas. I had a gray shirt. It had short sleeves, blue pants, all greasy. Now, what he's describing is their route, and he said he went towards Jason's house. He says he went the back way. I'm not totally sure what he means by that, and that there's really only one way, to get from where he was in Highland to Highland Trail Park where he lives to Lakeshore. Basically, you go down Service Road for a little bit from Highland. You go south a little bit. You go under the highway, this underpass. And then you go down and you're going slightly west. And then you go south for a bit, and you're at Lakeshore. And they were apparently standing and waiting on him out close by the service road, for a lack of a better term for that, though it's really not much of a, there's not much service there, so I don't know if a service road is exactly the right term for it, but it's a road that runs right parallel to the highway in Interstate 55. Then they start walking towards West Memphis. We walk over the overpass. There's an overpass between Lakeshore and Walmart. So he's saying they got on the interstate. They cross over. They're going to cross over to the service road. That doesn't really work, because that thing actually splits there. It doesn't make a lot of sense. It doesn't make a lot of sense because the highway splits there. It goes 55 runs into 40 and 55 run going east, run together for a mile and a half or 2 miles before they split again, going through West Memphis. And 40 runs east-west. But what he's saying, they went down, when he says Blue Beacon Road, he's talking about the service road that ran by the truck stop, the Blue Beacon. And then by a bridge, we saw a little trail. They would have gone past another overpass. Then there was a bridge. We saw a little trail, and we went down that little trail. Now, that little trail he's talking about is a little trail that runs by the Blue Beacon. And there's no particular reason why Jesse Misskelley Jr. would know about that little trail, except that he'd been there. He says we stayed on the road all the way down, went through the red light, over the railroad track, and on down to the then Blue Beacon and Loves. Over the railroad tracks, there are railroad tracks that run right there at that intersection as well. It's run right in the general area of where 55 and 40 join Missouri Street, not 55, but it's all right in there together. And I'm a little confused now. He's got me confused. But Blue Beacon and Loves are both off the service road. We're very right next to the woods where the boys were killed. Robin Hood, also known as Robin Hood Hills. There is a red light. There is a railroad track there. And he describes what he was wearing. He's very consistent about what he was wearing that day in all these confessions. A Stidham mask. What did Damien have on that day? Like a black pants, black boots. Stidham. Did he have a coat on? A leather jacket. It was like a biker's jacket. He carried a stick, part of a tree. I would say it was long. Stidham, was it any of those sticks they introduced into your trial the other day? Yeah, that one that you was holding up and that had bark off of it. Stidham, had someone carved it? Yes, he carried it with him from Lakeshore. Jason was wearing light blue jeans, black boots like army boots. Stidham, what kind of shirt did Jason have on? It was black and had Metallica wrote on it. And it had like a background, like a grave, and it had a cross. We started walking a little bit further, and then we went over a bridge, and then I seen a little trail going down the bank. And we went down there and started drinking. And there's a bank that goes there, and then you go down into, or you did that. It's not any of that woods. That whole area's been bulldozed over, and it's very different now. I think it's grown up some since then, but it was just total. All the woods were taken out at one point. And But he's saying they went down a little trail down a bank, and there was a bank that went down to this little irrigation ditch where the bodies of the 3 boys were placed. It's a fairly high bank. We went down there and started drinking. Miss Jessie's already described getting Vicky Hutchison, his good friend, who's also good friends with the Byers family, and her son's good friends with Christopher Byers and Michael Moore, and he knew Stevie Branch, but he was particularly good friends with these other 2 boys. And they had lived in that neighborhood. She had moved to Highland, where Jesse lived, and had become friends with him. And she apparently routinely bought liquor for the kids in the neighborhood for whatever reason. Anyway, he says, we went down there and started drinking. Stidham, did anybody talk about hurting boys or killing boys or doing anything to boys? Doing anything to anybody? No, they didn't tell me nothing like that. But that guy that showed Damien that picture, that's what I figured. That's why Damien, he knew what he was doing, because when I seen that picture at that cult meeting, I didn't know who they were. I had never seen them until, after we jumped. After I jumped and started beating them, then I realized that beating them up, beating the kids up, then it went to my mind. A picture came to my mind. Then after that picture came to me and I looked down, that's who it was. And the crucial part of that is where he says of Damien, he knew what he was doing. He knew what he was doing. Did Jesse know what Damien was up to? Apparently not. Did Jason? Probably. Did Damien? Definitely. Misskelley continued. We sit out there. We sit down and started drinking. We sit by some trees. By a tree that was leaned over. There was like a I'm going to say like a water pipe. That's what I'm going to say what it was. I don't know what it was. A pipe going like this way makes like a walkway or something, like a little bridge, something like that. And we started drinking. Then we started drinking, and then we heard some noise, and then me and Jason hid, and Damien just sit there, and all of a sudden he told them to hide, and he did. Then these boys came up. Now, Misskelley accurately described the large pipe often used as a bridge to cross the 10-mile bayou into Robin Hood Hills. And one of the trees in there was leaning over, as you would kind of expect to see in a forest, particularly where there's a bank. One of the trees was tilted somewhat. Stidham asked, what else is beyond the trees? There was a clubhouse. Looked like some little kids, they went up there and built it. It's black, and to my knowledge, it had sides, like to keep the wind off of them. It had a top over it, to my knowledge. Now, there's no such clubhouse found at the scene, but later in this statement, Misskelley said he was actually remembering a clubhouse near his home. Aaron Hutchison's statements, and Aaron is Vicky Hutchison's son, repeatedly mentioned a clubhouse in Robin Hood Hills, though there was no sign of a clubhouse. His mother claimed she visited the site before the killings, and the clubhouse consisted of a few boards nailed up in a tree. Now, Aaron and Michael and Chris apparently had been out there quite a bit at one point playing, and of course Aaron gave a lot of statements about what he witnessed out there that have been the subject of a lot of controversy and speculation and derision, because they're frankly fantastic stories. But his initial story about seeing what appeared to be some sort of cult activity going on out there really did intrigue investigators. They just could never make any real use of it. He didn't testify at trial. And what he provided ultimately just proved to be not that useful. Misskelley, during this Bible confession session, started making a map as Stidham requested, showing the location of Southland Park dog track on the other side of the interstate, as well as other features. Stidham asked, "Where did you put a bridge at?" The bridge, there's the Blue Beacon, and there'll be a little, I'm going to say like a little driveway right up in there going toward the field, for tractors and plowers. And that was there. That's accurate. The bridge, the trail, water and trees, like big trees right beside that. There's going across like that. Creek, all right, there's the bridge. There's the trail, there's the bridge, there's water going up under it all the way down, then there's trees like that, then trees, and it goes all the way to the pipe, and then it goes on out. I don't know where it goes. All I know, it just flows. The house is back by this way, about where the driveway's at. Then there's a field, and you can see through them trees, and there are houses. What he's describing is the landscape there with tree, the Blue Beacon. There's a driveway. There was a driveway, like drive parking place back there, where vehicles would go back a little bit into this field. There was a field. There are trees. There's a little trail. There's a bridge. There's a bayou. He's explaining it, and the houses on the other side that just go on for as far as the eye can see on the other side, which isn't very far, but it's as far as the eye can see. Stidham, isn't there the bayou? Isn't there a bigger river or creek? Misskelley answers, by that field, where that driveway is, that there's a field and there's trees just like. Excuse me, I'm getting some notices from the tropical storm type notices on my phone. I better turn this off before I get an actual call from somebody. By that field, where that driveway is, there's a field and there's trees, and just like the bayou goes all the way up through there, all the way back to the inaudible, that's it. Misskelley continued, the bodies was thrown in water, deep, big. I'm going to say that comes to over my head. I'm going to say it comes to over my head, because I can't get in the water close to my head because I have to hold my ears. The bodies were not placed in deep water. Misskelley did not get into the water. He did not accurately gauge its depth, and you can certainly get the wrong impression here about what he's describing. I mean, it's not an accurate description of the water. Stidham says, well, were the bodies thrown in close to that pipe? Misskelley says, close to that pipe? I'm going to say about 15 or so, probably not even that far to the pipe. About 15 yards, probably, maybe not even that much. I could tell you if I was there. It was deep, but can't do it, to my mind, because I don't know feet, yards, or nothing like that. I'm going to say it was pretty close to it. Now, what he's saying is, I could tell you if I was there. If he was there, he could show you, is what he's saying. And he's also saying, most pertinently, I don't know feet, yards, or nothing like that. In other words, when he's saying about 15 yards, it's pretty meaningless. It wasn't that close to the pipe. It wasn't that far away. But it wasn't close to the pipe. It was up in the woods. The kill scene. It wasn't close to the pipe. It was further than 15 yards. Stidham asked, okay, you were carrying a... Yeah, I'm getting a little notice here that, water's up over the highway down by parts of the beach down here. So because of this storm we're going through, there really is a tropical storm going on out there. It's not, as far as what's going on at my house, the average thunderstorm might be worse on a minute by minute basis, but the storm's pushing a lot of water up into the Gulf and creating some problems. That's an aside. I'm not trying to give a weather report, but it's on my mind a little bit today. Stidham, okay, you were carrying a fifth of whiskey in a paper sack. Right. Stidham, who was carrying the beer? Damien. Stidham, and he was carrying a stick in one hand and the beer in the other? Well, it was Jason. Again, if you want to quibble about this and say he's not being accurate, well, he's not. Does that mean the whole thing's not correct? No. Stidham, how many times have you been there? That was my first time. I don't know too much about it. Now, Misskelley gave an accurate description based on this one visit, other than the water depth and the proximity of the bodies to the pipe. Stidham, did you go back there after the murders like you told Gitchell? Gary Gitchell being Chief Inspector Gary Gitchell of the West Memphis Police Department. And to this question about going back, Misskelley says, Stidham, how come you told him that? Just to have something to say. Stidham says, were you guys in the water? I don't get in water because I can't. I can't get my ears wet. I ain't getting in no water. Stidham, did Damien and Jason get in the water? No. Stidham, how come you told the police that you were in the water and they were going underwater and sucking each other? I didn't tell him that. I just told him they went under the water. I didn't know what they were doing, but they never went in the water. And in the initial the interrogation on June 3rd, Misskelley does describe Damien and Jason getting in the water and going under, and somehow the investigators jumped to the conclusion that they were performing oral sex on each other as part of this, even though reading it, he certainly doesn't explicitly say that, and I think they were jumping to a bit of a conclusion on that Misskelley can honestly say he didn't tell him that, and he didn't. Stidham tries again after revisiting some questions, and that was a case where there were some follow-up type questions, and because Misskelley is not bright, has 72 IQ, even though he's street smart, and he's got some smart mechanical ability, and he doesn't have the mind of a 6-year-old. Aaron Hutchinson has a mind of a 6-year-old. Compare what Aaron, and he was an 8-year-old at the time, but compare the stories of Aaron Hutchinson if you want to see something that's really just totally confused and chaotic and really kind of crazy, and compare those stories to Jesse Misskelley Jr.'s stories, and come back and tell me that Jesse Misskelley Jr.'s stories are comparable to Aaron Hutchinson's stories. They're not. They're much, much, much more coherent. They vary in some details from confession to confession. And within the confession, he's got some inconsistencies, like who was carrying the beer. But basically, he's telling a story that's grounded in some kind of reality and not just some sort of fantasy life, which is what Aaron had going on. Misskelley was aware of the facts of life in every sense of the word at this time. And by this time, he's 18 years old. He was almost 18 when he committed this crime. Stidham tries again after revisiting some questions about the setting. And I did, as I've said before, I don't reproduce every jot and tittle in the transcripts, just for readability purposes. The parts that don't really serve a purpose or tend to bring along the narrative, I tend to cut that out. However, I don't trim it back as much as, I could cut it way back and just give a synopsis of what he says in the confession that would be accurate. But then there would be those who would say, well, you didn't get into this, you didn't get into that, he said this and you didn't put that in, and blah, blah, blah. So I try to be as complete as possible without being ridiculous about it. In my book, this is from the book Where the Monsters Go. I have another book. It's the second volume of a 2-volume set. The first book is Blood on Black. And I have a revised, condensed, combined version called The Case Against the West Memphis Three Killers. All 3 books are available on Amazon in Kindle and print formats. And in the third book, the condensed, revised, combined version, I do cut back on a lot of stuff, and I do cut back on redundant narratives, and put in more synopsises of what people actually say rather than quote them at length. And it makes for an easier read in some ways if you're not willing to accept the fact that I'm just trying to present the case as it is and not distort the facts. Stidham tries again after revisiting some questions about the setting. Damien and Jason get in the water, to which, contradicting what he just said, Misskelley replies, yeah, Damien, we hear some noise. Me and Jason hid, and Damien just sit there, and we holler for Damien, not real loud, but lightly, and Damien hid. That's when them 3 little boys came out. They came up on their bicycles, and they laid the bicycles down. So Stidham asks him again about getting in the water, and he says, yeah, they got in the water, and then he goes on with this other story. He's not really that interested in talking about them getting in the water. Stidham stopped to ask if they'd been smoking marijuana, and Stidham says, Misskelley said no. And Stidham's doing this a lot. When Jesse gets going with telling his story, Stidham stops him with some off-the-wall question about, were you smoking marijuana? He's talking about the boys coming up and really this the crucial scene and the whole scenario. And Stidham gets him sidetracked with a question about marijuana. But Misskelley's going to barrel on through all this. But they're going to be talking about some other things in the interim. Asked him if they'd been smoking marijuana. Misskelley said no. And Stidham asked him about the whiskey bottle. Misskelley said, whiskey bottle, busted. Stidham, you busted it? Yeah. Where did you do that? Going back, when I was going back home, after I'd seen what happened, made me mad. Returning to the boys, Misskelley said, they came in, he wants to tell the story. Returning to the boys, Misskelley said, they came in from by some houses. That's where they came in from. He's describing them coming across this bridge. They're coming over from where the houses are on the bridge into the woods. Stidham, how did they get their bikes across the pipe? Pick them up? Stidham, they picked their bikes up and carried them across the pipe? They came up from that side. It must have been a trail because, I couldn't remember because I was there for one time. How many bikes were there? two, and there were two bikes. And I don't know why Stidham's they picked their bikes up and carried them across the pipe as if he's disbelieving. Well, they could have done that. It's really a question. I mean, they could have done that. I don't know why they wouldn't have left them on the other side, except maybe they were worried about them being stolen. The pipe bridge is a little precarious crossing. It's not really a bridge, but you can cross it. The water was fairly high. It's really kind of dangerous. I wouldn't want my 8-year-old kid out there going crossing that bridge, but pipe bridge. But they were doing it, and their parents didn't know what they were doing. So, and these are some adventurous little boys. How many bikes were there? 2. What color were they? Red, a light color, white color, greenish color, something where in there? Stidham, greenish or white? I'm going to say greenish. It was real light. It wasn't a boy's bike. The boy bikes were light green and red. The green bike had a lower crossbar than on a standard bicycle, resembling a girl's bicycle. Now, Misskelley would have seen the bikes during the course of the trial, so this isn't really that telling a detail. Misskelley, they came from back that way from their house, I guess, where they live at. They come from that way. From where we was at was by the interstate, Blue Beacon, where we was at. Wasn't far from the dog track. I mean, you could see it just right there. And you can see the Southland Park dog track. It was a dog track at that time. It's now a dog track and casino. Is within sight of, if you're positioned in the right way. If you're down in this creek bed, this little place down in the woods, you really can't see it because you just can't see that far. But, if you get up, get out of the woods a little bit, look over that way, you can see the casino's right there. It's not right across the way, but it's not far at all. When the boys came up, Damien grabbed one of them. I don't know which one. The other two tried to get Damien to stop, and then me and Jason came out and started grabbing them, started hitting them. Damien choked. I don't remember which one. Stidham. Now, you heard during the trial that the medical examiner said none of the boys were choked. Misskelley. He didn't choke him, choked. Just, just say just hold their head and choked. Not hard enough, just holding him. Stidham. When did the Moore boy, he's talking about Michael Moore, run from the scene? That's when, after I let him go. Stidham. You were holding the Moore boy? Yeah, and I let him go. Stidham. Why did you let him go? After I got through hitting on him, I let him go. Just let him go. Stidham. He took off running? Uh-huh. Stidham. Had any of the boys gotten killed yet? Or, no, Stidham. Did you know what was going to happen at that point? No. Stidham. Why did you chase him down and bring him back, or did you? No, I didn't, until Damien told me get him. And that's when I went back after him and got him. And then I brought him back, and that's when... Stidham. What was the boy wearing that you went and got and brought back? To my knowledge, I'm going to say the one... I don't know their names, to my knowledge... The one that was wearing like a Boy Scout uniform. I don't know. That's to my knowledge. That's what one of them was wearing. I don't know which boy. So you can see, even after the trial, Misskelley wasn't clear about the names or the specific identities of these boys. which he'd heard numerous times. He did consistently describe the boy he brutalized as wearing a scout uniform, which would accurately describe Michael Moore. Stidham. Damien told you to go get him and bring him back? Uh-huh. Right after I done hit him first. Stidham. Where did you hit him at? Where'd I hit him at? The head. Stidham. And was anybody cut or bleeding at that point? No, I was too drunk. I couldn't hardly do nothing. When I drink, I can't hit hard or anything. Stidham. Damien told you to get the Moore boy and bring him back, and you did that. He said, go get him. So I brought him back and just started hitting him some more. Then Jason pulled out a knife. He took one of them. I don't know which one. Cut him on. I think it was on this side of his face. Stidham, which side are you pointing to? This is the left. Now, Misskelley goes on to say that he thought the boy whose face was cut was the blonde one, which would have been Stevie, who had a huge cut on the left side of his face. Stidham, did Damien ever hit anybody with this long stick you're telling me about? He hit one of them boys in the head, and I don't remember which one. Now, there were really bad wounds that appeared to have been delivered by something like the butt end of a large stick to all three of the boys. Michael Moore had wounds that appeared to be from a stick. And, Misskelley was involved in attacking Michael. Misskelley also tended to downplay the brutality of the attack on Michael. So he's saying he hit one of the boys in the head with a stick. He doesn't remember which one. And it also goes again to this problem that Misskelley has consistently of just simply keeping these boys' identities straight. He never seems to be able to do that. He seemed to be guilty about his role in their murders, but he wasn't interested enough in them as individuals to even bother to properly learn their names and identities. So it says something about he has some moral capacity, but he's not smart. And he's not somebody he's a fairly callous person. We know he beat up on plenty of other people prior to this and never seems to have felt bad about it at all. Stidham asked, okay, when did you realize that somebody was going to get killed? After I seen Jason cut that one on his left side of his face, I didn't know he was going to get killed until I saw him get on top of one of them boys and cut him completely. Now, Misskelley consistently described Baldwin as the teen who cut Stevie in the face and sexually mutilated Chris. He consistently describes Baldwin as the aggressor with the knife who does the most horrific damage to two of the boys. Stidham, what do you mean cut him completely? Misskelley, he cut his penis off, and that's when I realized that, they're going to kill those boys. Misskelley said he just sat there. He was no longer holding down Michael, who was knocked out. So much for not being able to hit that hard. He knocked Michael out. Michael had horrific head injuries from the beating that Misskelley gave to him. And, we don't know for sure, but, if they'd somebody had come upon them at that point. It's not sure Michael would have survived that beating, even with a medical care and hospital treatment and so forth. It was pretty bad. I knew he wasn't dead because I know I went over there and touched him and he was still breathing. Stidham, okay, so were the boys making any noise or anything, saying anything? We put a shirt in their mouth. Damien and Jason did put their shirt in their mouth. Then they took off their pants. Jason and Damien and them took off them little boys' pants, pulled them completely off. They didn't unsnap them or nothing. They just jerked. They was inside out. They pulled them from the top, just jerked them off. And then Damien started getting on, started playing with that little boy's penis. I don't remember which one, but I remember it was one of them boys that got his pants completely pulled off from the top. Then Damien started messing, playing around with his penis and stuff. He put his hand over the top of it on, squeezing it. Then Damien stuck his penis from behind one of them little boys. I don't remember which one, but he didn't stick it all the way in. He just stuck it in and pulled it out. That's it. By the way, two of the boys' pants were found inside out, as if pulled off from the top.
Stidham.
He didn't actually, and Misskelley says no. Miss Stidham, raping? Misskelley says no. Stidham, he just stuck his penis in there? Misskelley says he just stuck it up there and just pulled it out. Then he shut off on the pants and stuff. Stidham, who did? Damien. Why did he do that? To be sick? Stidham, shot off on the pants? What color were the pants? Was he masturbating? Do you know what masturbating is? Jacking off? Uh-huh. Stidham, did he wipe himself with the pants or did he... Misskelley, no, he wiped it off on the pants. Stidham, what I'm saying, did he squirt it on the pants or did he wipe himself off with their pants? He shot on the ground, then he wiped it off with their pants. Now, forensic analysis found a possible semen stain on pants belonging to one of the victims. Immersion overnight had corrupted the stain as DNA evidence. Also, this was on denim. A semen stain on denim is apparently hard to get the proper sort of sampling from, particularly if it's been corrupted like this. With better technology now, could be different. It probably would be. Stidham. Now, so there was an 8-year-old boy had, let's put it this way, most 8-year-old boys don't leave semen stains on their pants. So there was a sexual component to this, and it's just a matter of who do you think the perpetrator was. Well, we're hearing about it now, and I happen to believe this particular story, and this particular version of the sexual attack makes a lot more sense than what Misskelley had described with the ultra-violent attacks in his first confessions. Stidham, now what was Jason doing while Damien was doing his jacking off stuff? Misskelley, Jason went to that one, to one of them boys, started beating him up, just hitting him, and he cut off his, penis, the whole work. Jason got on top of him and started hitting on him. That little boy was squirming, and then Jason he stuck his hand over a shirt, and then covered his hand over his mouth over the shirt, and he just kept on hitting him, and that boy didn't move no more. Stidham, did you see him cut the boy's penis off? Yeah, I just seen Jason on top of him, and that little boy was still squirming, and the next thing you know, I just saw a hand come flying like this. That's all. He slung something. I don't know if it was a knife or that little boy's penis or what. He wasn't laying on the water. He was laying on the bank by the water. He wasn't laying in no water. Now, we know there were knife wounds on Christopher Byers, indicated there were a lot of what was described as pickering, I think. And the Truth and Justice episode, they were talking about this. Little jabs and stabs with a knife to inflict pain, and the boy was squirming. We know that there were lots of these little knife wounds to Christopher Byers. Indicated that he was, tortured for quite a bit, besides the horrific wound that he had where he's emasculated. And he had to have been squirming quite a bit, just to put it mildly. But he also says he kept punching him. This is a really violent attack. He punches him, and the boy didn't move no more. I mean, he just keeps hitting him. And then we're talking about blood, and a lot of people who talk about this case ignorantly describe the lack of blood at the scene. Well, it's true and not true. There wasn't a great deal of visible blood at the scene, but there was blood found at the scene on the luminol testing. A lot of the crime scene had been cleared up quite a bit, and the blood left there corresponds as because Misskelley's not that exact. His description of where these attacks occurred is not that exact, but it correlates roughly with where the blood is found. Correlates roughly with Misskelley's accounts of how these attacks went down, including in this description. Stidham, blood went everywhere. Is that what you told the officers? That's what I told them. I just seen blood, Stidham, what did they do with the blood? Wiped it off in water and stuff real good? Stidham, what was Damien and Jason saying while this was going on? They was just telling them to shut up and get quiet. Stidham, what were you thinking while this was going on? That's when I stopped. When I seen Jason get on top of that boy and sling his arm like that, that's when I stopped everything. That's when I stopped. I just sit there. I didn't. I just sit there. And then I was going to see what they was going to do with them. Then they tied their hands, right hand to their right ankle and their left hand to their left ankle. Stidham, what did they tie them with? Shoestring. Stidham, why did you tell the officers it was a brown rope? I made it up. Stidham asked why, and at first Misskelley gave no answer. Stidham, you don't know why? Misskelley says, In other words, he says he made it up, but he can't say why he made that up in the confession, which is one of the details that people always who are criticizing that confession always bring out. They bring up the time of day, and they bring out the brown rope instead of shoestrings were used to tie the boys, and they disregard everything else there that Misskelley gets right, or that makes a coherent, credible story. Misskelley said he did not help Eccles and Baldwin tie up the boys and left, quote, after they done tied them up. Misskelley. After they done it, they tied them up, and put them in the water. Stidham, tell me everything that happened from the time Jason cut that boy's penis off. Then he said he wanted to come over to where I was at, mess with that boy. I told him no, I done seen enough. Then he went over there towards with Damien. That's before that boy get his face cut. Then he went over there with Damien, cut that boy's face on the left side. I mean, after he didn't cut him, he, scratched him. Then he went back and then he sliced him. I'm going to say sliced. Stidham, did Damien ever suck on that boy's penis? After a long pause, Misskelley answered, "Nah, the one that he was going to get, screw him from behind. He went on him. He went down on him. He didn't suck on it. He bit the top, the head of it. Not hard, but I'm going to say he didn't do it hard. I seen his head going down that way. I don't know, I don't know if he did or not. And I seen his head go between that boy's legs." And that would have been Stevie Branch, and Stevie Branch's penis had some damage to it that indicated that it had been played around with, as Misskelley's describing here. And Stidham asked him this leading question. Misskelley's not coming up with the thing about the oral assault. Stidham, after Jason cuts this little boy's penis off, and after Damien jacks off and wipes himself with the boy's pants, then what happens? I remember how Damien grabbed that boy by the ears. I don't remember which one, but when he was going to get up the butt, he grabbed him by the ears from behind. He grabbed him by the ears. Stidham, okay, what happened what did Jason say after he cut this boy's penis off? Did he say anything? Excuse me. Now he said he wanted him to do the other one. He wanted to do the other one. The one that I was beating up on him. I told him no, I done seen enough, and I wasn't going to let him do that one. Stidham, weren't you afraid he was going to stab you or something? Yeah, I was afraid, but I've been stabbed before, but I wasn't going to let him bother me. After they done tied them up, I wiped my footprints with a stick, like a zigzag, covering up my footprints and everything. And the blood, they wiped them on, like in the water, make sure all the blood was off the water, make sure the blood was off the leaves and stuff. Stidham, how did they do that? Rub together or get their finger and just wipe it off real good and just wipe that off? Stidham asked how they got the water up on the bank. Misskelley indicated they splashed with their hands. Stidham, how close to the water was Jason and the little boy when he takes his pants off? To my knowledge, I'm going to say he was pretty inaudible, enough to splash water out, to splash water. That's how close I'm going to say it was, to my knowledge. Baldwin eventually took off Michael's clothes. I let Jason, he laid them down beside the boy. Stidham, then what happened? To my knowledge, what I seen, it was hitting. He stuck his finger up the boy's butt. That's about it. The boy was unconscious after they done throwed them in the water and stuff. I didn't see what they done with their clothes, but when I seen them throw them in the water, that's when I left. And I'm going to stop there because this goes on for quite some ways. So I'm going to get back to my tropical storm. It's not hard to stay at home today. I don't know what day this is. If it's day 90, I wouldn't be surprised. I don't think it's been that long, but it sure seems like it. Anyway, thank you for listening. Hope everyone is well and taking whatever measures they feel appropriate to maintain that. This is Gary Meese with The Case Against, signing off.